Hello, good evening, and welcome to the 36th Legislative District Virtual Town Hall. Tonight, you'll be hearing from State Senator Reuven Carlisle and State Representatives Noel Frame and Liz Berry. Tonight, your lawmakers will be answering questions that have been submitted in advance through a survey. If you're tuning in now to this live stream, you can also post questions in the comments section, and a staff member will get your questions to our lawmakers. To get started, I'll open it up for some brief opening remarks from your legislators to introduce themselves. We'll begin with Representative Berry. Rep. Berry, the floor is yours.
Hi there, good evening, everyone. It's so great to see you all. I am live streaming from my LA's apartment because my internet went out right before this event about 30 minutes ago. So we're all about changing on a dime and acting spontaneously and living wildly here in the 36. So here I am, but I have a beautiful view of Inner Bay. So that's a good bonus here. It's been so fun representing you in Olympia. I'm now 3 months on the job, and I am just so grateful every day that you've sent me to do this wonderful work. I'm really proud of the 4 bills I've passed out of the House. We've now officially passed our House of Origin cutoff. I've got 3 wonderful labor bills I hope to tell you about later, a great bill that impacts Inner Bay District in the 36th, and also working on a plastics bill over from the Senate here in the House now. One thing I get asked a lot is, what is remote session like? Well, it's very strange. I don't know any better because I've never done it any other way. But it's exhilarating, it's busy, but it's also lonely at the same time. You're just sitting in your room all by yourself, hanging out with yourself each and every day. But I'm really looking forward to all of your questions tonight. Ask anything, we're all here. And again, it's an honor to represent you, so thank you.
All right, I think I'll take it next. Good evening, everyone. I'm Noelle Frame, your other state representative. I am 5 years on the job. Got a few years on Liz now. I'm excited to have her join me as my new seatmate. Reporting live from Finney Ridge this evening in my little retail office away from my house, so that the baby is not interacting with us today. I'm excited to be at this moment in time, really proud to share that as the House Finance Committee Chair, really moving forward progressive revenue legislation this session, and excited to tell you more about that during tonight. But also really delighted to share after this House of Origin cutoff, like Rep. Berry said, to pass two major pieces of legislation. One, to help children entering our foster care system and ensure that as they are entering into legal proceedings, that they are making sure that their rights are known and that their desires are expressed to the court. Really important for our kids in foster care. And second, a bill I'm really excited about for micro enterprise home kitchens. We have so many entrepreneurs looking to enter the food business and frankly make ends meet in this really challenging economic time. So really excited to put forward that piece of legislation in partnership with local businesses right here in the 36th district. So with that, I will turn it over to Senator Carlisle.
Good evening, everyone. Appreciate being with you. I'm Reuven Carlisle. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to connect again tonight. I want to take a moment and just express a bit of gratitude for the challenge that all of us have had this past year. And we talk about it a lot in terms of the impact on families, on COVID, from emotionally and spiritually and physically and financially, just on every level. And I think it's important to recognize that we as part-time citizen legislators care a lot about improving folks' quality of life, and we're working on trying to get the employment system up and running to a better level, in our healthcare system and our tax system and our transportation system and our climate and so many other issues. So really look forward to the conversation tonight and appreciate everyone engaging in your civic life. And it's a real honor. The 36 has the highest percentage and level of voters in the state, and we just have a deeply engaged and passionate, entrepreneurial and progressive and thoughtful group of citizens and residents, and we just really appreciate this opportunity for a serious conversation tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you all. We're now going to get started with our first question. The first question comes from Nancy, and Nancy asks, how are you going to manage all the incoming federal money? And will it obviate the need for a capital gains tax?
Thanks, and Nancy, I will take that question. So thank you so much for the question. I'm sure as many folks have been tracking, the newest federal stimulus and aid package was just signed into law by President Biden. So great to say President Biden last Thursday. And quite honestly, Nancy, it's going to take us a little bit of time to unpack everything that was in that piece of legislation. I've personally been on the phone with our federal representatives and trying to get a sense of when we're going to get more guidance. It's going to be weeks in the making, but I can tell you, Nancy, that we do have different sort of buckets is the best way to say it, of funding coming in. Some of it that's sort of really dedicated and spoken for, like funding for K-12 schools, like funding for vaccinations and ongoing work on public health. And then we also have some legislation that is really intended sort of as a direct assistance for the provision of government services that we, the legislature, I think have much more input on and flexibility to making sure that we are really targeting how we meet the needs of our constituents in this moment. And I will say, Nancy, I'm really grateful that the federal money is coming in at this moment in time, because it's really allowing us to really meet the needs of our constituents in a time that if we, in Washington State, with the tax code that we have today, if we were trying to raise this amount of money to meet the needs of our constituents, the tools that we have in the toolbox are pretty limited. And frankly, they're the tools that ask the lowest income Washingtonians to pay the most, like sales tax. So I'm really grateful that the federal government is helping us in this moment. But you asked a question, does it obviate the need for capital gains tax? And the answer is absolutely not. These federal funds that are coming in, they are one-time dollars. They are not ongoing. And we have needs, particularly childcare, which is called out as a specific thing that we want to invest in the capital gains legislation. The childcare industry was on the brink before COVID. COVID has laid bare how badly we need to invest in childcare to get Washington back to work. And at the end of this time period with these federal dollars, we're going to need to continue investing in childcare as one example. And so I think the federal dollars are really a great bridge for us to take the time it's going to take to set up the capital gains and be ready for us to meet the needs of our constituents with better, more progressive tools in the toolbox, rather than relying on things like sales tax that ask the lowest income Washingtonians to pay 6 times more in taxes as a share of their income than our wealthiest households. So very necessary, Nancy. Thanks for the question, and look for more information coming from us as we get more guidance from the Treasury Department on those federal dollars.
Great, thank you. So the next question is from John. John asks, the unemployment system in our state is broken. What can you do to fix it?
Rep. Barry, you appear to be muted.
Hi, sorry. Technical difficulties all night. I'll take that one. I serve as vice chair of the House Labor Committee. So this is an issue that I have been working on ever since I started and really hit the ground running on. And like many people in our district throughout the state, I have been disappointed, dismayed, and frustrated by the unacceptable delays that workers have faced accessing benefits, the UI system. And many of us, all 3 of us, have fielded so many constituents calling, asking for help navigating the system. Many of the stories are heartbreaking. And not only do we need to fix these things for the problems we're facing today, but for the future. And that's something I'm also looking at. There's a wonderful bill that came over from the Senate that Senator Conway had that will put together a reserve force of UI adjudicators. So if we ever have a situation like we're in today, where there's a mass bunch of people who join the UI system and need benefits, we have more people on the ground who can help access those. It also instructs that we send out letters in plain English tested way, so it's not so confusing with lots of different mashups of how we describe what's happening to the UI benefits. It also allows for different languages in those letters so more people can access them more easily. I'm also laser focused on what more we can be doing this session to help workers. So I have a bill I'm really proud of that's over in the Senate now that would allow people who were laid off or furloughed during COVID to access the paid family and medical leave program, a program they paid into, and be able to look back their 2019 hours work so they can access those benefits. And ESD estimates that'll be 42,000 families who will get access. And we're hoping to fund that through federal stimulus dollars. So it's a direct way to get people cash immediately. The House also passed off the House for the Worker Protection Act. It's a great bill that gives workers more tools to enforce existing rules and laws around the workplace that I'm really excited about. And again, the American Rescue Plan that Biden just signed into law, it includes an extra $300 a week for workers on UI right now, and also $1,400 stimulus checks for many of you at home. So I heard that folks who have their bank accounts hooked up with the IRS got those checks deposited on Thursday, which is fantastic. If you don't have that hookup, the checks are mailed out, were mailed out today. So look for those. And if you're having any trouble with that, please let us know. We're here to assist. But I'm very excited about a lot of these changes. And again, I think that we make these changes now and we keep monitoring the system and we go back to it next year and the year after if we're not seeing the changes that we need to make sure that when we have another COVID-like situation, we have mass unemployment in the state of Washington, that we're ready for it and we're here to serve the people who we're meant to protect. So thank you for that question.
Thank you for that answer, Rep. Barry. The next question is from Sam. Sam asks, can you discuss the differences between the Washington Privacy Act and the People's Privacy Act? Senator Carlisle, I believe this one's for you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sam. So to bring everyone back up to speed, I think we all know that the Cambridge Analytica Facebook disaster in terms of consumer data privacy was just a shocking jolt to our democracy 4 years ago, and just a reality check to how serious consumer data privacy is to our digital world. I've been passionate about this issue for a long time, and I just really believe that one of the critical issues of our day is how our data flows throughout the internet. And fundamentally, it ought to be as easy to get your information out of the internet, of the black hole, as it is to get in. So the difference between two major proposals is I've had the Washington Privacy Act now for 3 years. I've worked with stakeholders on all sides to try to come to consensus, the Attorney General, the Governor, and lots of other stakeholders to to try to craft a proposal that works so that we basically have the ability to opt out and of a whole bunch of targeted ads. So if you search for a product on Google, competing products shouldn't show up on Facebook 10 minutes later. Your data is sold from Instagram and Twitter and many other sites in all kinds of different formats. So the real question is, how do we regain control of that? The ACLU has been very active in this space and is a real thought leader in many ways. They've crafted a proposal based on a very strong enforcement associated with individual lawsuits. So basically the fundamental difference in many ways between the two proposals is I support Attorney General enforcement of these rights. Those rights are the right to delete your data, the right to access your data, the right to opt out of targeted advertisement and the sale of your data, things like that. Those are rights that don't exist today. Good example is DNA testing service. If you and your family want to do a DNA testing service, I think after you get your results, you ought to be able to delete that data and not have it continue down the process of a company's database. So the main difference between the two proposals is the issue of enforcement. I would say that the ACLU bill, again, real thought leaders on this issue in many ways, but it has not advanced out of committee in 3 years. It hasn't advanced in terms of any meaningful action. And the Washington Privacy Act, my bill, has passed out of the Senate 2 years in a row with 3 years in a row with virtually unanimous votes of 47-1, 48-1. So we're really close to a deal, and I'm feeling good about my work with Representative Hansen. So thanks for your interest in that issue.
Great, thank you. The next question is from Tara. Tara asks, last summer, many people in Seattle and nationwide took to the streets demanding police accountability. What is the legislature doing to address this?
I'll take this one. Look, this is one of the biggest issues we've been tackling this session. The House has passed out 5 really great bills I want to go over with you in just a second. The Senate has also passed out 5 great bills that are coming over here. We believe, this delegation believes, to root out racism in our policing is going to take bold action. We believe that Black Lives Matter. And I think that the legislative proposals that we have passed out of both houses really show that and prove that point. It is unacceptable that our Black neighbors face police violence more than our other neighbors, and we need to do more to address that. I have been personally a strong supporter of all the different proposals. I personally co-sponsored all of the bills put together by a team of our colleagues that were members of color that were part of the House Democratic Caucus policing leadership team. One of the bills that I'm very excited about that passed out was dealing with police tactics, banning chokeholds, banning tear gas and other kinds of those kind of tactics, and that bill passed out with a great vote. We also passed a bill out about de-escalation tactics, making sure that those are the first line of defense before escalating any violence, and then also creating an independent investigations office within the Office of Governor to independently investigate these kinds of cases when I see them. I personally am pretty heartbroken over the fact that the so-called qualified immunity bill didn't make it out of the House. It was a personal heartbreak for me. It's something that I still think we need to go after in the years to come. But we've got 5 great bills coming out of the House. I know Reuven has 5 great bills coming out of the Senate if he wants to take a moment to address any of those. But I know we're dedicated on both sides to get these through. And I'm telling you, it is really exciting to see the incredible momentum and the real change that is going to happen around policing in our communities. And unfortunately, the events of last summer were the momentum we needed to have real progress on these issues. And I am so honored to be a part of what we're doing. So thank you for that question. I think we're going to have good news at the end of the session about what we're able to do around this issue.
Great, thank you, Rep. Berry. The next question is from Steve. Steve asks, please explain the details of engrossed substitute House Bill 1236, the mandatory lease renewal. Is this a backdoor step toward rent control, or can landlords still get rent increases? Property taxes, insurance, and condo dues all increase every year. How have you protected landlords?
Thanks, and I'll happily take this one. So the House Bill 1236 really had nothing to do with rent increases or the rental rate. It had everything to do with the terms of the the lease and the reasons for terminating a lease or not extending a lease. And I will just say, and I know we got a lot of questions in the chat about this, this is what I've watched really closely. As some of you know who I've met with in the past, I've rented my own home. Frankly, when I came into the legislature, it is, as Senator Carlisle said, a part-time citizen legislature. We do not make enough money to live on that salary alone in Seattle. And so for me, I rented out rooms in my house, and in some cases, my entire house in the beginning of my time in the legislature, frankly, to make ends meet. So as somebody who has been a landlord and plans to be a landlord again in the near future, I paid a lot of attention to this piece of legislation. This legislation really said, if you are going to rent your property, and this is going to be someone's home, and I think there's a difference there. You know, somebody has a property and they own it, but a renter, this is their home. This is sort of the fundamental piece of having a roof over your head. We're not just going to have no cause evictions anymore. We're not just going to say we can kick you out whenever we feel like it, but instead we're going to have reasonable expectations for landlords and tenants about what are the reasons that a tenancy should come to an end. There is a very detailed list of just reasons to end a tenancy and just reasons for an eviction, including things like you want to sell the place, you want to occupy the place, you want to have your own relatives move in. Something I've thought about a lot is somebody with aging parents. If I want to move my own parents back into my rental property. But in the process, and somebody asked the question about, you know, how do we protected landlords? In our floor debate, we also accepted an amendment that talked about, in addition to the sort of listed reasons, we also added a provision for other sort of specified and genuine economic or other business reasons. That was, you know, gives us a chance for a more expansive opportunity. We had a great example and conversation about, well, the express reasons say I can move in my family member, but what if I need to move in a caregiver because I myself am older and I need that space for a caregiver? That's a legitimate economic reason that could be covered after in that sort of catch-all that we really accepted during the debate. You know, we had a lot of conversation about, oh, this is the end of fixed term leases, and that's just simply not true. There are provisions in the bill that still says that you can have a fixed term lease between 3 and 12 months. And if you want to have end the tenancy at the end of that term, whether it is 3 months or 12 months, you can do that with no cause at all, as long as you do a 60-day notice. But after that initial term of that lease, then you have to have one of those sort of legitimate business or economic reasons, again, like 12 of which are listed. And then we also have the catch-all. So I think that it's been crafted in a way that is really balanced. I know we've had a lot of conversations. Senator Carlisle, in these last 5 years I've been in, we've had a number of mom and pop landlords come to town halls, and we've talked about this. And as I watched the debate on this bill, I saw what amendments were being brought forward. I saw Democrats and Republicans bringing forward amendments, and I saw them debated. I really do think a really broad set of voices was at the table, and it is really striking the right balance here. But at the end of the day, this is not simply, you know, property that we should like willy-nilly put people out on the street. And I know that's not what people intend to do, but it does happen. And I think particularly in this moment where we've had eviction moratoriums in place, thankfully we've got federal dollars coming in to help with that sort of back rent because so many people are really going to need that rental assistance. We need to be really thoughtful about how we move forward. And I think that this bill has really crafted the right balance. So I appreciate the question and the engagement from landlords and tenants alike. Thanks.
Thank you, Rep. Fang. So our next question comes from the comments. This is from Nelda. Nelda asks Senator Carlisle, when are you going to schedule a vote on Washington Strong?
So thank you. There's a number of questions on this issue, and I just want to thank all of the folks, the citizen activists, the Carbon Wa, just a whole bunch of fabulous people, just deeply passionate about this issue. And so I'll take just a brief moment to really put some of the issues on the table. So first and foremost, it's important to recognize that I think that 80 to 90% of the carbon policy and the climate policy is very similar between the various proposals in Olympia. The environmental justice language is very similar. The allocation, the appropriation of funds is very similar. There's a whole bunch of important similarities, and we have so much more in common than in disagreement. So Governor Inslee and Representative Fitzgibbon, the chair of the Environment Committee and the House Representatives, and really one of our state's premier environmental champions, Senator Saldana, my colleague, Senator Hobbs, Senator Lease, Senator Joe Wynn, and many, many others. We've really been working on these issues a lot, and Senator Loveland and just so many others. And, in the course of this process, the governor, who has a lot of credibility on climate issues and a lot of passion and a lot of work on this, has really helped be the architect of a strategic framework of a combination of important packages: the Clean Fuel Standard, a modern transportation system that invests in multimodal and all of the critical investments that make our community work. The Cap and Invest program, the Climate Commitment Act that I'm sponsoring, as well as the HEAL Act from Senator Saldana about environmental justice. And the package is really moving forward with a lot of momentum. There is so much work that's gone into the Washington Strong, which is a proposal for folks who are not familiar with it, a proposal that is a carbon fee, carbon tax based upon the idea of bonding those revenues to have additional dollars to invest in the community. We have 2 initiatives in the last 4 years on the issue of a carbon fee, and we have 4 polls that have been done in the last 5 months by environmental and labor organizations, by industry on the corporate side, as well as by independent entities on Elway poll as example. All of them show the same thing, which the support for a carbon fee or a carbon tax is minimal. It is not in the types of numbers that it would be material to be able to survive the ballot or to be able to be passed. Cap and Invest does have a great deal more support, not only in the inside game of Olympia and the conversations we're having, but in terms of the ability to protect it at the ballot. So this year, we are not moving forward with the Washington Strong. That is in no way a criticism of the proposal. It is about consensus. My colleague, Senator Saldana, has been instrumental in help crafting this proposal. She also has been supportive initially at the Washington Strong. We're moving forward with this with the governor aligned, with Representative Joe Fitzgibbon aligned, with myself, as well as a number of other colleagues. There is a great deal of consensus that we have to take bold climate action. Moving forward with a program like this is a meaningful way to receive emission reductions of 30 million metric tons. It is the only path forward in the short term to move forward with climate emission reductions to get us in line with Paris Accord level reductions. And so that level of emission reductions is imperative. We have to move forward. And it is fundamentally a climate bill. It's fundamentally not a tax bill. It does raise money for transportation, multimodal, and other investments, as well as operating budget, but it is not intended to be about taxes. It is intended to be about having a cap on emission and then rolling down the reduction. So I know people are passionate about this. I know people are deeply, deeply committed to a carbon fee, a carbon tax. But again, it was the governor and the House and the Senate leadership came to alignment on this issue, and we've made a decision as a team to move forward. So I don't have one negative thing to say about Washington Strong. I think it's bold and courageous and has a lot going for it. I understand the passion for it. I hope people can appreciate that when you see alignment between the House and the Senate and leadership and the governor, it also carries a lot of weight. So I appreciate your passion on this issue, and I hope you can appreciate how committed we are to moving forward on climate action this year with the Clean Fuel Standard, Cap and Invest, a modern 21st century transportation system, and the HEAL Act. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Senator Carlisle. Next question is from Emily. Emily's question is, we need a transportation package that reduces carbon emissions and air pollution, improves multimodal transportation choices, ensures fair and equitable outcomes for all, and ultimately shifts away from roadway expansion. What will you do to ensure that transit and multimodal investments in the House transportation package are passed in the final budget?
Well, I'm happy to take that question. I sit on the House Transportation Committee, and let me tell you, this has been a committee that I have had a steep learning curve on. There is a lot to know about transportation in this state and this region. It's a super important committee. We all know that transportation sector makes up 45% of all emissions in our state. We know we need to tackle the issues with transit and multimodal in the next transportation packages that we're going to see. The House transportation package that was released is pretty incredible. They went out, and this is before I, was elected. They went out, that leadership team, and spoke to over 90 different listening sessions, hearing from all corners of the state, all different kinds of groups about what they wanted to see. And what they put together is a really, really strong package. First and foremost, prioritizing maintenance and preservation. When I think about that, I think about the Ballard Bridge and how our bridge is really on its last legs. And when we have our next earthquake, who knows what's going to be happening to that, and what an important area that is for not only the district, but for the whole state. Investing in frontline communities, supporting economic recovery, aggressive carbon reduction, so a lot of what Reuven just talked about, and living up to our commitments. So we've got a $3 billion commitment now to fix the fish passages that we have a moral obligation to do. So there's a lot that's wrapped in all of that. And I think that if we can get that House transportation package out of the House with a really strong vote, it'll send a strong signal to the Senate that we're invested in this approach. And I think it helps us and sets us up well for a great negotiations across the rotunda to make sure that those transit investments are preserved. And again, from what I understand, being new to this whole process, what's been put forward in this House transportation package is some of the boldest investments and ideas that we've seen around transit and multimodal and equity and reducing carbon emissions. So I'm excited to be a part of that. And if I may, moderator, I know that there was a question asked follow-up to our question around policing. I saw from Claire, and I just want to say Claire wanted to know, what is going on with the qualified immunity bill and why did it die? And I think the answer to that question is that it just didn't have the votes to get out of the House. There were a lot of concerns around from state and the local and county governments around, if we held them more accountable for their police force killing Black people, that they would be held more liable. And they were very concerned last minute. And so I think that we have a little bit more education to do on that issue. It stays in rules. We're going to go back hard at it next year and get it out of the House and onto the Senate. So it is not a giving up. It is just a not right now, but I am still fully committed. I was on the team that was trying to help push it over the finish line, and we just did not, honestly. Time simply ran out. But please know I remain personally very committed to getting this done. So thank you for the follow-up question, Claire. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rep. Berry. So our next question is from Doug. Doug asks, what is the current status of the tax reform efforts of the House Tax Structure Work Group?
Great, Doug. I will happily take that question as the co-chair of the said Tax Structure Work Group. Appreciate the question. So at the end of December, the Tax Structure Work Group kind of completed the first big phase of the work of the kind of most recent iteration, which was completing 18 months of economic analysis and modeling on potential alternative taxing scenarios to our current tax code. And really encourage folks to take a look at that. The website, really easy to punch in now. It's taxworkgroup.org. If you go to the Learn section, it's just this treasure trove of research on tax policy. I know, very exciting. For the 36th district, I'm not being sarcastic. Y'all love tax policy. The very first report in that Learn section is sort of the culmination of that work, where we model a bunch of alternative scenarios. And the one that I'm just really excited for folks to take a look at, particularly if we have small business owners watching the town hall tonight, is we've modeled 3 potential alternatives to the B&O tax. The business and occupation tax is a gross receipts tax that taxes every dollar that comes through the door of businesses with no deductions and just no consideration for whether or not you're even profitable. And we're looking at moving to some alternative, and we've modeled a value added tax, a margin tax, and then a corporate income / net receipts tax as potential alternatives. So really exciting work. The next step after the legislative session is we're going on a roadshow, both virtual and hopefully, fingers crossed, in person in the fall, to different geographic areas, to different groups, businesses, residents, etc., to take out a package of alternative scenarios saying, here's your current tax code, and here's scenario A, B, C, and D. What do you like? What don't you like? We're actually going to have a tax widget or a kind of a calculator on the website where people can actually kind of go in and look at what their tax responsibility might be under different scenarios. So right now, in in the session, while we're doing our regular legislative business, Senator Keith Wagoner and I, the co-chairs of that work group, he's a Republican senator from Sedro-Woolley in the 40th district, pardon me, not 40th, 39th district. We've been working through with the team at Department of Revenue and the consultants, coming up with what those packages are going to be, and we're going to fine tune them over the next 2 months and then take them out on the road later this year. So really a great opportunity for robust public conversation about the future of the tax code. And while all of this is happening, of course, we're in our regular legislative process and advancing and considering other tax proposals, both ones that raise revenue, ones that reduce revenue, and generally make changes to the tax code. So 2 parallel efforts happening at the same time. Thanks so much for the question, Doug.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Rep. Frame. Our next question is from Margaret. Margaret asks, what are you doing to advocate for Seattle's and parents to get kids back in the classroom and make up for lost learning?
Well, I'm happy to take this one. This has been so challenging for everyone, for educators, for families, for students, for parents. And I don't know about Reuven and Noel, but this is the #1 issue I've been hearing about with constituent mail and email and letters and calls and the whole deal. And it's personal for all 3 of us we're all parents. And I have my 5-year-old son, George, is going to be an incoming kindergartner at John Hay Elementary. And you better believe, like, we're sweating it out too about, what's going to happen with school next year. So I'm sure many of you have now heard the news. The governor, I think it was Friday, his proclamation that schools must offer some kind of hybrid in-person learning instruction for K through 6 starting April 5th. And I'm looking at my notes because I want to get this right. And by April 19th for K through 12 students. And again, this proclamation does not require you to send your kids to in-person school. So if you are not comfortable, you can continue to choose to do remote learning. And I think right now, at least my top priority, and I don't want to, I think Noel and Reuven agree with me, is let's get our educators vaccinated. It's happening right now. Childcare workers and educators are literally getting their shots in their arms right now. And my hope is that once they're fully vaccinated, this is going to coincide really well with the timing of when this hybrid model will be opening up. And look, as a legislator, I've been amplifying your concerns about getting our kids back in the classroom. I've also been amplifying our concerns that we're making sure we're doing it safely and that we're making sure our educators are all fully vaccinated, because I think that's a really important piece of this. And again, Biden's American Rescue Package, which, by the way, we are super excited about because we keep referencing all this amazing money coming into the state. $1.9 billion with a B earmarked for K through 12 schools in Washington State. That you did not mishear that. I swear that is what is coming here. And that's going to help us with safe reopening. It's going to help with PPE. It's going to help with ventilation systems. And I'm really pleased with all of that support we're going to be giving our schools, our districts, our educators, and our kids. So it's a really complicated question. It's really multi-layered, but I feel personally that we're moving in the right direction. And I want you to know, call us, email us if you have any concerns, if there's anything we can do to help facilitate this to be a successful and smooth transition for all of our families and our educators and our kids. Does anyone have anything to add on that? I know it's complicated.
No, I think, Liz, you said, and the point that I wanted to make sure people heard, and you said it very clearly, was that it is a choice for parents if they want to send their children in. The mandate was about schools having the option for parents to send their kids in. And I know what I'm grateful for is that this announcement coincided, almost within days of the announcement, that many more folks are going to be eligible for vaccines, and that our educators will, prior to the announcements of the last week, it would have been months before educators could get their COVID-19 vaccines, and now will be moved up in that list. And that's really critical. Our teaching staff, our other staff also need to feel safe. And I know some of the kids that we were most concerned about getting that in-person learning, are also some of the most vulnerable kids, our kids that are in special education. And we want to make sure that our children are protected, our staff are protected. I know several of us signed on to a letter just literally days before the announcement coming out, asking the governor, asking the city to coordinate with the school district to try to provide a centralized, coordinated way for our educators and staff to get vaccines. And it is sort of all unfolded in a matter of days that all those things happened at once. I mean, would love to take credit for the Biden administration announcing all the changes. I don't think we got to quite call credit for that, but I think we've been really trying to balance the interests and concerns of parents and staff and families, and I think we're on the right path. So really excited for that announcement. Great. I think we had another question that I maybe signed up to answer now that I started talking again.
Yes, the next question is from Brett. Brett says, I'm disappointed to learn that House Bill 1156, ranked choice voting, did not meet the cutoff this year. What would your advice be for a supporter to help get the bill passed?
Yeah, it's a great question. And as a co-sponsor, I was also super disappointed not to see it get through. Yeah, Representative Berry as well. And it's one of those moments where it's kind of like what Liz was saying earlier with the qualified immunity bill. Like, we just didn't have the votes. And so I appreciate your question is, as an advocate, what can I do? I know one of the really important stories of ranked choice voting is, the ability to bring a broader, more representative group of people into the elected process. I got to say, that was one of the arguments in favor of districts in the Seattle City Council elections years ago. And that obviously has just paid off in spades. Like, what a tremendous change we've seen in such an inclusive difference in who's represented on our city council. I think we as advocates need to do a better job of pointing to the examples of where this has been successful in other places. So that for the folks that have had some lived experience with the system that wasn't necessarily great, that we have really good stories to counter that, and also to talk about what's different. The state's electoral system has changed a lot over the last several decades. We're a full vote by mail state now, and some of the experiences that we've had in Washington were in a previous iteration of our election system where we had sort of a blend of polling and vote by mail. So I think we've got some work to do to sort of make sure people understand that the true amazing potential ranked choice voting can have with increasing our representative democracy. So thank you so much for that question.
Thank you, Representative Frame. Our next question is, when the statewide eviction ban expires this year, tens of thousands of people will lose their homes. What, if anything, is the legislature doing to deal with this huge influx of homelessness?
I can't remember if one of us said we were going to answer this, but I'll just really quickly point to, we've talked about two things already, the Just Cause Eviction Bill 1236, as well as rental assistance is coming with the federal dollars. The combination of those two things, we are really hoping will head off just thousands and thousands and thousands of people getting evicted, and in many cases being out on the street. That is sort of, I think, a big part of our push. And I will say, and I saw one of the questions pop up in the chat about, well, 1236 and, in the rental assistance, like, you're not doing anything for landlords. It's like the rental assistance is going to go to the landlords. That's the whole point, is like, we want to keep people in their homes. We want them to be able to pay rent. We want to make the landlords whole for this time that they, we had the eviction ban in place, and really make sure we're sort of backfilling that loss of rent. There is a separate bucket for that, I believe, in the federal dollars. And then we also have, again, some of those flexible dollars. Rental assistance is a massive priority for us. I think the eviction moratorium was critical to ensuring that in the midst of a pandemic, we did not have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people being evicted and out on the street. I think it was the right decision. And now we're trying to take those follow-up good decisions to make sure that we're making people as close to whole as possible. We're keeping people with a roof over their head as we ride out these final months of the pandemic. So I don't know if the Representative Berry or Senator Carlisle, if you have something to add there. Or good.
Okay, great. So our next question is, what can you tell us about the redevelopment of the National Guard site on 15th Avenue near the Whole Foods?
Ooh, I'm excited about this one. I feel bad, like Ruben hasn't getting enough questions. He'll get some more. So this is one of my bills this year, everyone. I'm very excited about. And actually, I'm sitting, I don't know if you heard the beginning, but my internet went out in Lower Queen Anne. Reuven kindly invited me over to his home because we are neighbors. But I went to my LA's home, Emma, and I'm looking out at the beautiful site actually from her window right now in Interbay. So it's a very auspicious time to talk about this bill. But I have a piece of legislation that would set up the Interbay Community Preservation.
Did we just lose Representative Barry?
We may have just lost her.
Oh my!
Did you hear me?
Oh, there you are. You're back.
Can you see me? Okay, I don't know what is going on with the internet in the 36 today. Can you guys hear me?
Liz, you're back and we can hear you. You should jump right in where you left off.
This is just not my day. I'm telling technology. Okay. So the National Guard currently sits at Seattle Armory in Interbay, and they have a 10-year plan to move that site to North Bend. It's really an issue of state and regional security, because we're in a tidal basin over here. A lot of the guardsmen who come in to report for duty actually live in all different parts of the state, and it's very difficult for them to get into our little nook over here with all the traffic issues and everything. So it's part of the military's plan to move to North Bend. We're trying to secure that land out there. And once they do move 10 to 15 years, we're going to have this 25-acre site in the center of Seattle, in the center of the 36th district, in the center of Interbay, that is kind of, up for us to dream about what we want to do with. And so the reason we're putting together this authority is to have a external stakeholder process with members of the community, so everyone can come together and decide the best use of this piece of property for the future of what we want to do with it as a community. So I'm really excited about that. That bill got out of the House with bipartisan support. It has a hearing tomorrow morning, bright and early, sharp, 8 a.m. in the Senate Business Committee in front of Senator Mullet, who is very invested in this issue also because the National Guard is moving to his district. And Senator Frocht is also very engaged in this issue, as is Senator Carlisle, obviously. So I feel like we've got a really great bunch of advocates in the Senate to help us move it across the finish line. People have been asking me, why are we doing this bill now if it's not going to happen for 10 years? We want to set up the group so we're ready to roll when the military signs this piece of land, this beautiful piece of land, over to the state. And we're ready to maximize its benefit for the public good and listen to all stakeholders and everyone in the community about what's best for it. So if you can't tell, I'm super excited about this. So if anyone ever wants to talk more about it, feel free to reach out. But thanks for that question.
Great, thank you, Rep. Barry. Our next question is, what efforts are underway to expand broadband this session?
Well, actually, a ton. You are not going to believe this, but under all of this federal legislation, they're now looking at a total of close to $7 billion available for build out in Washington state of broadband. So we have a couple things underway. We last year or 2 years ago created a state broadband office under some legislation that I sponsored with Senator Sheldon. And that office now has a strategic plan, and we're in implementation mode. So very exciting progress. There's a handful of efforts to, the number one goal is to be the number one state in the nation in procuring merit-based federal aid. So not just formulaic, but really to go after it. So we have a good plan underway. What you're seeing is a data exercise that captures what people's actual experience is. And the broadband office is collecting tens of thousands of people signing up to figure out where the real problem statements are. The tribes are very active. And so the second thing is we have three pieces of legislation, one from Senator Honeyford from Eastern Washington, which sets up a funding mechanism from our capital budget to use for local match so that local governments and local entities and companies and others don't have to come up with their own local dollars. We take care of that. The second piece is there's two pieces of legislation, one from Senator Lisa Wellman and one from Representative Drew Hansen on broadband, which would grant increasing authority to public utility districts and other levels of government. And so we're in negotiations between the House and the Senate relative to what that legislation will look like. And that opens up for governments to be able to be in the retail business. There's pros and cons to that, but there's a lot of momentum behind moving forward. So we have a good strategy, we have funding underway, and I think we're going to make a big difference. I would say it's important to keep in mind that we are in the top 3 or 4 in the nation in overall access to internet. Of course, there's question of speed and cost and monopolies and all of that, but there are a lot of progress that we see in the last few years in that space. So we're making progress. I think it's going to be a historic year for broadband. And then there was one other question while I still got folks about the healthcare bill from Senator Hasagawa, I think, 5204, the whole Washington Health Trust. Few people asked about that. That was in the Healthcare Committee and did not come out of the Healthcare Committee. So didn't come in the Ways and Means where I serve. So I don't know the reason of why that didn't get a public hearing. But I would note that Senator Hasagawa is the caucus leader. So I think if he wanted a hearing, he probably could have gotten one. So anyway, so I don't know the reason that didn't make it through, but I appreciate there's a lot of good work that's gone into that bill.
Moderator.
Yes.
Anyone else? All right, should we do it ourselves?
Well, one last question I saw. Somebody just asked in the chat about
my
restaurant
apologies.
workers. Oh, can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you now, Megan. You must have been on mute.
But I saw, Megan, I can ask one last question on myself. Is that weird? I saw the question in the chat about restaurant workers and the vaccine distribution for them. And I want you to know it's actually so timely you asked this question today. I had a meeting just this morning at 8:30 in the morning with several legislators in the House around labor issues and the governor's staff and DOH, because we pinged them immediately with deep concerns about the governor opening up restaurants to 50% capacity, which of course we're all excited about for those small businesses, but very concerned about restaurant workers, because if you think about it, restaurant workers are at some of the highest risk. You literally are taking off your mask, eating inside close quarters with not a lot of ventilation. A lot of restaurant workers are immigrants and people of color, a very high Latina population. We want to make sure, just because those groups of workers aren't as organized as some of other frontline workers who have labor unions advocating for them, we want to make sure their voices are at the table around this conversation around who gets vaccines and when. So we amplified their voice this morning with the governor's office and with DOH. We appealed for the fact that they need to be in line immediately to get their vaccines if we're going to be opening up restaurants for more people and opening up their exposure. And I think our voices were heard. I'm feeling confident that they're going to come up with a solution in the next few days. So look for that announcement. And please contact my office if you have any more questions, or if I can help you or any of us can help you navigate the vaccine system. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Rep. Berry, for stepping in when I had some technical issues. Apparently, all of us are having issues with our internet this evening. So our final question is, will the proposed capital gains and other taxes drive away high-tech industries that helped to turn UW into one of the best universities in the world?
And great, Megan, and I'll happily take that question. We just today in the House Finance Committee had the hearing on Senate Bill 5096, the capital gains tax. And first of all, just big thanks to Senator Carlisle and his Senate colleagues for voting for it and sending it over to us in the House. We're excited to have the capital gains bill. And I just have to say, this is one of these arguments like, oh, people are going to leave and tech is going to leave. And I just have to tell you folks, research paper after research paper, evidence after evidence, it does not support this argument. We actually did some research of our own in the tax structure work group about economic competitiveness. And the conclusion of that is that there is an extraordinarily weak relationship between tax policy and economic competitiveness. Washington State is winning on economic competitiveness. The indicators are really what boils down to our amenities and the investments that we make in our community that attract people to want to live here, work here, play here. I think we're winning on that argument. quite honestly, there's not a lot of other places for folks to go. 41 states already have a capital gains tax. And the other states that sort of compete with Washington in terms of the tech sector, California and New York in particular, already have a capital gains tax and an income tax. So the arguments and the threats that the tech sector will somehow leave if we pass this capital gains tax, I find it flabbergasting that somebody would bring that forward. And also that the idea that somebody who makes in excess of $250,000 of gains, because there is an exemption for the first $250,000, that somebody could make $250,000 in gains and not feel like they have a responsibility to have a portion of that invest in the community that they live, work, and play in. I don't know, folks. I don't feel like that's somebody with my Washington state values. We are a community that cares about each other. We invest in our community. This is the right investment to make to reform our tax code. As I opened with, we have a tax code that asks the lowest income folks in our community, people making less than $24,000 a year, to pay 18% of their income in taxes. And we ask the wealthiest among us to pay less than 3%. And frankly, in some cases, far, far less than that. The time has come. I think the question that we all had, that we all knew how bad our tax code was, that has been laid bare by the pandemic, the income inequality, the wealth inequality, and the tax inequity in the state. We're going to fix it. So thank you so much for the question. And thank you again to Senator Carlisle for helping to send that over to us. Rep. Barry and I are super excited to grab the baton and get this across the finish line this year to help make sure Washington's tax code is more fair.
Great. Thank you so much. So that was our last question of the evening. Thank you to everyone who submitted a question. I'm now going to turn it back over to the legislators for closing remarks. Rep. Barry, would you like to begin?
Well, yes, I would. I just want to say thank you again so much for everyone joining us tonight. We've had technical issues. It snowed this morning, then it was sunny. It's daylight savings, so it's a little lighter than usual. I think we're all a little discombobulated on this Monday, or at least I am. So thank you for joining us. Again, my door is always open. Email me, liz.berry@ledge.wa.gov. Call us if we can be of assistance to you. If you have questions about bills, it is truly an honor to serve you. Thank you for the great privilege of doing this job. I love working with our great team here. And 6 more weeks. Let's go get them. Thanks, everyone.
And I'll go ahead and go next, and then we'll have Senator Carlisle close out. I just want to kind of echo the thanks for everybody participating tonight. This remote session has been such an interesting experiment, but I have to say it's going well. I think we are being able to do the people's work. I've been thoroughly impressed with folks that were deeply afraid to engage in technology amongst our legislative colleagues who have done well. I've been thrilled to have something that was long put off, the concept of remote testimony, to have the public welcomed into our public process without having to drive down to Olympia. This morning during the capital gains hearing, we had 101 people signed in to testify and 3,900 people signing in not wishing to testify. Folks, that wasn't even possible before the remote session. You had to be on campus to sign in, and it's been really cool to have a different process for people to engage. So thank you all for being with us tonight. Thank you for allowing us to represent you in Olympia, and keep these questions coming. We've, like I said, 6 weeks to go. Let's do it. And thank you so much for your engagement on this. Senator Carlisle.
Thank you so much to my fabulous seatmates. And I also just want to express gratitude to everyone and reach out to us anytime. Our email, we really pay attention to people's voices, and it matters a lot. Thank you for your passion. And I think it's important to step back. U.S. News and World Report just listed us as the #1 quality of life in the country. And that doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean it's trivial, the challenges and the issue that people are struggling with. But it really does mean that as we sort of elevate our dialogue about how to get rebuilt from COVID, and how to get our healthcare system, how to have a more equitable tax structure, how to tackle climate change deeply and meaningfully, how to build a 21st century transportation system, how to have an operating budget that has values, and so much more. It really matters a lot. And so your voice matters. And again, we have a fabulous district. It's a great honor to be of service to you. And I know that sometimes we we want perfect to be the enemy of the good on various issues, and we want it all our way. But we do have 49 legislative districts and a lot of colleagues, and we're a big state. We're not a little state anymore. And so getting consensus and moving forward it really takes a lot of work, and we have a great deal of respect for the for our team and for the people we represent. So thank you so much at the district level and of course statewide. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you. So that's all the time we have this evening. Thank you so much for attending and for submitting questions for our lawmakers. If we did not get to your question, you can directly contact Senator Carlisle, Rep. Frame, and Rep. Berry's offices with your comments. Their contact information will appear on the screen right after this. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great evening.